Daniel's here. Correctivity for homeostasis, and thereby autonomy and sovereignty for European peoples, genus, and species. I'm here today with Snorkelborg, a Swedish guy living in Japan, and we're going to be talking about some of the obstructions and possibilities to our coordination in the interest of our European kind. How are you doing there, Snorkelborg?
Well, thank you very much for having. It's actually Snorkel Blog, but
Snorkel Blog. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Topics we could possibly cover. I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me on your show, or on having me on your show. I appreciate.
No problem. I'm sorry about that. Snorkelborg sounded more Swedish. I think that's why I said that.
Yeah, it does. It also sounds a little bit more ominous. So, but I don't really come with the right body type or the right voice to be a Borg. Or yeah, I'm doing well. Great. If anyone needs to know, I was a little bit late. We were supposed to. I kept up, Daniel. Sorry about this. There was some dirt that came, and I had to shovel and showered up, and I'm ready for a chat.
Very cool. Glad to have you here. It's possible that our other Swedish friend Per might join us. I hope for a few minutes. He will eventually, as these talks might proceed. He definitely will.
I just have by the feedback that my voice is all high again.
Do you have your YouTube open?
I do have. Yeah, I was actually. Let me turn that up.
Mute that. If you mute that, you won't get the feedback.
What? Wait. You know what? I'm going to do.
Could it be me?
Sound up. I'm just going to. Hello, testing my audio right now. It is sounding weird. Let me just unplug my audio for just a second. It sounds like a chipmunk. Let me see here. How do I do this? Sorry, guys.
So I'm here talking with not Snorkelborg, but Snorkel Blog, in fact. And one of the things that I was reflecting on from his conversation with Claire Caw was the fact that maybe the institutionalization of marriage and monogamy, that is to say, upholding it, doesn't require, to begin with, unwavering religious conviction of a God beyond, but perhaps with a stable society, incentives can be provided.
By the way, my audio should be back. I've got one guy who's given me feedback from Telegram, so hopefully it sounds all right.
Sounds
that's
perfect.
Good. Oh, does it? Okay. If I did sound a little bit like a chipmunk earlier, like the entire time we're chatting for like an hour, this is what I normally sound like. I agree with you. So
some timbre to your voice there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, regarding the conversation with Claire, I listened to your. I didn't finish all 7 hours, like I was saying backstage, of your live stream the other day, and that was so far. That's all I have. Unfortunately, that's all I've listened to of your content, and I have to apologize for that. But you had mentioned that I might be wasting my time, and you know what? You're not wrong. You're totally not wrong, and I'm not sure exactly why I've decided to have this conversation, or maybe not decided. Maybe I'm one of those people that just kind of goes with the flow. And so she contacted me, or something like that. I can't remember exactly how it went, but anyway, we're
I
chatting.
totally understand that. I've talked to her for many hours now, so I mean,
okay.
There's reasoning behind my opinion, and it's She has a beautiful way of speaking, and she could be a big help, but somehow you wind up talking to a brick wall with her. And I don't think that she should be trying to determine the moral order of the Europeans. That's really out of place for her to try to do. If she wanted to, she could be helpful in criticizing and be a critic of female behavior, because it's a bit hard for us to do, and within the disorder of modernity, they can be really brutal and unjust and deserving of critique. But that hasn't been, somehow enough for Claire, and also she's always defending the kosher folks, and worse than that, you'll find, I don't know, yeah, I think that you'll find that she seems to be trying to get me anyway into trouble, saying things that I'm not saying, like I favor deporting them or something. That's not the way the DNA Nations works. We work from the inside out. We're working to enlist the cooperation of fellow Europeans.
Right.
We're not, just some people wouldn't be included from the start. We're not kicking anybody out.
Right. Well, if I can sort of add I don't want to make it. Listen, this is not going to be, by the way, for anyone listening, this is not going to be a stream about Claire Caw. Maybe this is the last thing I'd like to say about that. She did a stream that ostensibly, probably, going to add another adjective in there somewhere, perhaps, was about a conversation I had with her in my DMs, as well as what we shared in our live streams. And overall, I thought that the summary she gave of my answers, and looking back, it was like she asked like bullet form point questions, and I'm not used to people doing that, and it almost got me to think, is there some journalistic aspect to this that I'm missing? But I answer what I feel is necessary to answer, and maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But there was one question that she asked, and if anyone wants to, they can go to that portion. They can go to that video. It's I think 3 or 4 videos ago on her channel, and the way that she characterized my answer was completely wrong. And because of that, we had a little back and forth, stupidly again, in the DMs, which led to like 100 messages back and forth. But it made me sort of rethink about what you were saying. Am I wasting my time? Because the answer that she gave to her listeners and whoever else is listening in about this quote unquote group of people that I am supposed to represent was not what I believe, and is not what I said, because the framing is completely different. And I don't want to bring up the framing of this, because that's not the topic of our conversation. And again, it's not one of those things that maybe you chat a lot about. But it got me to think that when you're chatting with someone who disagrees with you on very fundamental issues, I'm not sure it's really possible to come to, I guess, to use a Sam Harris term. This is going to sound horrible, but yeah, to steel man the other person's position. And I felt a little bit betrayed right there. In which case, I'm not sure I want to go forward because of that. And after that, I realized that there was a brick wall, and you're right about that. It always comes back to, for instance, some sort of vote on no-fault divorce, and then the West fell apart. It's like, I think there was, from my perspective, there was stuff that happened before that, perhaps for hundreds of years, maybe thousands, depending on how deep you want to go.
Probably thousands, yes, definitely. Well, I mean, fundamentally, our genus, European peoples, who are under attack, and how to reestablish borders and boundaries is the central issue. She wants to make gender the central issue.
Right.
Probably because she really just doesn't care that much as we do, and she might in fact be a bad actor being put up to it by somebody to put forth this nonsense idea of secular Correctivity or whatever. And yes, gender relations are problematic, but they can be worked out and negotiated much more fairly if we can get a hold of our borders and boundaries.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I will say something in her favor. And then let's talk about something else. But yeah, it's true. I mean, it's hard to have somebody in your. Well, for instance, in her case, I think she lives in England. It's hard to have somebody from abroad advocating for the people who, like, if I'm suddenly coming on the Japanese nationalist scene, it's like, yeah, there's a Canadian that's advocating for the Japanese nationalists, and whatever I say, even if it's something that speaks to the heart of the Japanese, something proper, right? It's like, why are we relying on this foreigner as a bulwark against, our enemies abroad and within? There's that. Right. But so I don't want to get off on that, but like what I appreciate about her is that you can actually, whether or not there's a brick wall, you can chat, and she's got a very staid demeanor, doesn't go up or down. There's no anger. And whether or not you deeply disagree about something, you just chat. And this was very different. I went on to someone else's live stream 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't know if he's a mutual. His name is Jacob. I can never say his surname. He's a little bit overweight, so I'll just go with the first few letters of his surname. It's Jacob Fat. And he got triggered 3 or 4 times in the discussion about the simplest thing. Literally, I was like, I am in favor of essentially subsistence farming. And he's like, he did the whole bug out eyes, and he got just really crazy. And he went off and off about how my cognition is not secure and my understanding about history is just wrong. And I was like, man, it's just, subsistence doesn't just mean, hand to mouth eating dirt. There's a little bit more to it. But anyway, yeah. So I appreciate, especially after that, talking with Claire. It's
she's a talented lady, and she's quite intelligent.
She's certainly more intelligent than I am.
I don't know about that, but there's different kinds of intelligence and ways. I wouldn't say that. I've heard you speak, but she is intelligent, and that's what's frustrating about it, is that she could be a help, and a foreigner in a native land could be an asset, but unfortunately she doesn't. She won't do it, and she. For various reasons, she doesn't understand and doesn't empathize sufficiently with the situation.
You sure you don't? Come on, she knows that you really secretly do desire to have secular Correctivity run your country, right? It is really. I'm very interested in listening to the conversation, but I mean. Of all the foreign ideas, it is that's very hard for me to jive with.
Nobody wants it. It has the hallmarks of an assignment. Here, take this and put this to the European nationalists.
Well. I guess I've been had in a certain way, if so. But
no. It's a normal thing, normal, reasonable strategy, and it was mine too. Whether she is or not, to talk with her to get certain ideas out there.
And I've appreciated. I've got to be very honest. Now we're still talking about Claire. I've appreciated a lot, to be quite honest. I just waffle on in my videos, like I just drive my car. That's it. I drive my car, and whatever comes to my mind, I go over a bump, and it's like, oh, there's a bump. I've been thinking about different bumps, like whatever. And to have like a proper topic and one that I am opposed to, but why, right? If someone just out of the blue is like, why? What would you think about some sort of no-hide system ruling the country? I'd be like, well, I would not be for it. Well, why not? And until you have a conversation with somebody, I'm not the type of person that has a 10-point list of all my beliefs. But once you have a conversation with a person, I find that it's a little bit easier or to understand what you actually believe. And
Right.
I've really appreciated that, to be honest.
No, I understand that, and I've experienced that myself. It helps you to refine your ideas, to shape and craft them, and even where you're frustrated and you come away from a conversation angry, you're reflecting on it and then able to understand better upon reflection why it is that you object. So it can be useful,
Right.
but there's a limit with her, and it's unfortunate. But I think that everybody everybody finds this eventually. Oh well, poor Claire. I guess she'll have people who will talk with her still. She has a way of talking that makes you almost feel sorry for her, but whatever.
She's very clear. I've never talked with anyone that doesn't say so it's hard. I look back at my conversations when I'm in the car. I can count how many times I've said like almost on the minute mark. But with her,
I think I don't notice you saying it a lot, and I think that you speak very well. I'm impressed by all of
what?
your.
You're right. For the last couple of minutes, I haven't said it. Oh, well, there we are. Ha! Ruined it.
Oh, and even if you do, don't worry about it.
All right.
So.
Yeah. So, what do you want to talk about?
Well,
I'm stoked, man. Sorry.
I'm glad to have you here, and we have a fabulous opportunity before us because what I'm doing here, what this platform is about, is a radical variation on the Orion idea. Our race is our nation, our skin is our nation, our genetics are our nation. So you can be a citizen of the nation or of the parallel nation anywhere in the world. You can carry it with you, and furthermore, this is the right platform for that advocacy,
right?
Because we're on solid moral and legal grounds. We're advocating all European peoples, genus and species, that is to say, our overall European peoples and the particular kinds, but in such a way that is not supremacist and imperialist. It doesn't seek to exploit, kill, let alone genocide anybody else. We're not supremacists. We're not imperialists, and so it should be a platform that any normal person is comfortable with, and we can even work with non-Europeans, coordinate with them. And then we can go into a bit more about how this platform differs from the alt-right, the dissident right, but specifically, I've been fascinated by the fact that you clearly understand that the kosher folks are not European.
Right.
And with that, as a guy living in Japan who's married to a Japanese woman and has one Japanese child, another on the way, I'm eager to demonstrate that the DNA nation concept can work with that it's not 1,000% purist concept, and I'm eager to work with the Japanese in particular. I see them as important potential allies. I think that the Japanese want to maintain themselves as a species, and I want them to maintain themselves. And I think any good person wants them to maintain themselves. And see, what you, in a sense, represent a position that can negotiate between those who would be accusing me anyway of advocating an unrealistically pure position. And for your part, you could be, I know you now enough to say that you would want to manage the degree of admixture of a people such that it's not harmful to the overall pattern. Am I saying, am I correct to say that you think that some degree of mixed population is not bad, but you wouldn't want it to be too much, something like that?
No, I think that would be fair. I mean, so I am living in a country that, I suppose you could call a nation state that up to the government says is 97% Japanese. Now the governments, I think it's pretty fair to say that governments are always trying to downplay the foreign population living in their borders. So it could be higher. I don't think it's much. It's probably, if it's higher than that, it's probably not much higher than 5. But what I've noticed, and everyone that comes to Japan, and I'm using Japan as the vehicle to describe what you're like, basically to describe the position that you've sort of not put me into, but what you're saying about myself. And so the first time I came to Japan, of course, was more Japanese than it was now, in terms of there were more Japanese people, there were more Japanese businesses. And every time I come back, there's more foreign investment into it. And that's not just capital investment, it's also human investment. But at the same time, there's still this core of Japaneseness. And when you go, what's really beautiful is when a Japanese person takes a holiday within Japan, they generally like to go to places that are more Japanese. And because of that, there's still this sort of connection with sort of Japaneseness. But at the same time, the Japanese, what's kind of cool, what they do, and why am I talking about this? Am I actually answering your question? Well, I guess I'll go on for another minute or so. What they've done through the last 150 years or so is, if they want to have good Italian food, they won't import a bunch of Italians. What they'll do is they'll send chefs abroad and they'll learn how to make good Italian food in Italy. And so they come back with that. And then what happens is then the culture starts to respect certain aspects of certain foreign nations. And so then eventually there is a migration thing that's happening in Japan right now, and it's ramping up quickly. And I'm not sure what I think of it all told in Japan, because the way it's ramping up is they're hiding the population. So the people that are coming in, hundreds of thousands at a time, are being hidden in farms and factories. So your made in Japan stuff, it's probably not made by Japanese. But at the same time, they are doing it in such a way that you you don't worry so much about the foreign aspect. Why am I getting off on this tangent? Because yeah, I absolutely agree that there's a certain amount of, you can have foreigners come in and you can have them blend into your culture. And I think that there have been success stories and there have been the opposite throughout modern history for sure. And I think Japan in its way is showing at the moment kind of a mix. And so if you look throughout history as well, I mean, it's like there's always been people coming in. We've always had this. It's never been as much. And when you have a little bit of the mixture, then that the people always, they have to respect the people. They have to respect the culture, and they have to, blend in and kind of blend away. And they bring in their best, I suppose. And I'm not sure how good of an answer that is.
Well, they have been ingenious in managing this conflict and managing their kind to
Right.
date. They're under siege in a way, as we all are, but they have been ingenious. But the thing is that with the DNA nations concept, through that, we're not relying only on political ingenuity and the bureaucracies, which are usually, especially in the West, and possibly obstructive. We are taking it upon ourselves to secure our people, our quantities and qualities, and I would certainly want for the Japanese to do that too.
Yeah.
And this virtual parallel organization of our national interests would then be liberated from these land and temporal obstructions, and that's a big advantage that we have over any platform that going so far, and also again a perfect vehicle because we're not associated with anything that is illegal or should be illegal. Who knows what to do? They could they could try to say any kind of thing, but I for one am prepared to take a stand here.
No, I'm a newbie here. I am a newbie here for sure. And
Everybody.
By the way, in the chat section,
you're on the ground floor. Go on.
Yeah, on the ground. I'm on the ground floor, and in the chat, there's also a friend of mine who's been on my channel now twice, Tor Meet Uns, and I assume that he might be on the same ground floor. But the DNA nations concept you have talked about on your channel, and then today you tried to explain it to me backstage. Can you give me like a 1 minute simple overview? Just as I think I kind of understood what you're saying, but I think in some ways I think you expected me to know a little bit more than I know about it, and so that I don't have the proper background.
I don't necessarily expect you to know more about it, but it's just that we are taking the concept. Have you heard the acronym ORION? Our race is our nation. We're taking that to a genetic level, and it's not the only criteria, but it's a really solid basis for organizing people, and especially keeping out people who are not us.
Right.
Our enemies, of course, don't want us to organize. So as we might organize on the basis of our genetic interests, both as a genus, European, and the species, that's what I'm calling the individual kinds, the French, the English, the Germans, the Swedish, the Polish, the Italians, the Danish, the Czechs, Slovaks, and so on. The idea is to preserve our genus and our species for the most part. And the advantage of this is that we can, our people can be anywhere in the world, in the universe, and be a part of the nation. And
Okay, I see.
and that organized there, we can begin to work on land claims, and then hopefully eventually reestablish our European homelands. But that's it's not something that we need to try to take on right away, immediately, or overcome the political obstacles that exist. And not only is it flexible, but it's a ultimately it's a potential to gain huge numbers of adherents, enough to be an economic and military force to hold up, for example, to China, or for very expensive projects like pursuit of outer space. So, and it's the most radical basis upon which we might organize. Does that give you some clue?
It gives me some clue. So it's not necessarily limited to, if I understand this correctly, it's not limited to where in the world you are. It's more of organizing based on, well, first
on where you're from, I suppose, or your genetics.
Yeah, on genetics. So that being the European, then of course the smaller group within Europe that you're from. If I understand that correctly, if I'm
right, I guess that I'm not sure. Well, it's true. If you're Italian, you couldn't say you're Swedish, or if you're Swedish, you couldn't say you're Italian. But you could both say that but you could say you're European in either case. And if you're a mixed kind, we're going to have categories for mixed kinds and ways to negotiate this. But I think that this will help greatly in providing the security to our people, that our kinds are looked after in quantity and quality.
So it's kind of I guess that the first step is to establish a network of people that you, well, I guess the positions that you understand.
Right, that want to join this, let's say, union or union of unions, that with the concern being to preserve our kind, as some people might want to preserve the rainforests or endangered species. Well, we want to preserve our European kinds.
Right.
And then once we unionize as such, then we can begin to help our peoples and provide and that structuring of accountability will allow us to do so many of the things that the kosher folks glom onto as the purported representatives of the left and social justice, that they glom onto because these are the things that are associated with compassion and social advocacy.
Right.
Our people, in reaction to the abuses of these concepts, frequently, some of our younger guys in indignation think they're going to prove themselves different and true white men by showing how brutal and antisocial and ruthless they can be, which is, well, just as our enemies would have it.
Yeah, I mean that's I imagine that I've played my hand in a way that's sort of given, listen, I guess I'm on the not the fence. I suppose there's a bunch of fences. I'm in the middle of a bunch of fences as it goes, and because of that, I've not really taken on a lot of issues. I've not really taken a really strong look at what I necessarily believe on this issue or that issue, or for instance, this movement or that movement. I just kind of generally go with my feeling, and because of that, I know that some of what I say and some of, I guess, I'm not sure about my demeanor necessarily, but certainly some of what I say and maybe how I say it, apart from just general demeanor, may play, unfortunately, into the hands of, I guess you say, the enemy. At the same time, there is a point at which the enemy defines certain things, but they don't define everything. And some of what the enemy is going to define as this is bad is going to be a natural portion of a people. And what they will use of the natural portion of this people is they'll use that nature and they'll somehow taint it. And I'm not bringing up any specific historical element or historical person necessarily here, but just sort of the general feeling, like when you, I'm not sure if you've ever gone into a dark room and part of the room is illuminated by a mirror and then there's a wall in the middle and the other half is not illuminated by anything. And when you're in a dark room, you won't have good parallax on any one thing. So you'll be looking for something because you don't want to hit a wall, right? Sometimes you can feel, even if you can't see, you can kind of feel a wall. I'm not sure if you've had that experience, but something's there. But then there's this time where there's a wall there, but because your other eye sees way down the hallway and is looking at sort of a brighter thing that's the mirror, you won't see that thing. And what I'm trying to say here is both things are true. There's a wall in front of you and there's also a mirror way down there. And you can kind of interpret where you are based on which eye is seeing what. And the enemy, whatever the enemy is, will do the same thing. They'll know the good nature and the bad nature. They'll know the things that get your goat, etc. I think it's get your goat. I think that's what it's called. And they'll make something that's natural seem evil. And I know that I've probably, in the grand unscheme of things, where there's words you can't say and there's ideas you can't express and there's certain people that you shouldn't talk about, whether it's Plato according to some people or someone else. I know that I've probably fed the quote unquote enemy certain things. At the same time,
I don't think you have. No.
Well,
I don't think you have. There's nothing wrong with Plato, by the way. I mean,
there isn't.
Approach,
there's people that hate him, though. There are people that hate him, and I'm bringing him up only to give kind of like a generic person that people do, whether you're on this side or that side of the progress. Like, I don't know what you call it. Listen, the terms are confusing to me, but like the progressive, there is no past. There is only the future.
Here's let me try.
Go ahead. Yeah.
This, see how this overall perspective that I've come up with matches up against what you're experiencing. What we're up against is as a people, as European people, is we're being vilified as racists, and
right.
we're up against this anti-racist, which is basically anti-classification, and depicted as unjustly as such as supremacists and imperialists.
Right.
It's not true, none of this platform anyway. They the kosher folks, for some reason, for whatever reasons, have treated us as enemies historically and in recent history, and all of us. And they know, they're experts at social organization and advocacy, and they know they know what that takes, and they organize, unionize, as I might say by analogy, and build coalitions between non-European peoples and those who are hostile to European peoples.
Right.
And these things are in the realm of, let's see, rhetoric. They are not strictly adherent to laws of physics and biology. They are more about advocating peoples and historical narratives of peoples. And exaggerated through undergraduate academia and weaponized against European peoples.
Yep.
European peoples see these modes of social advocacy as repugnant and not something that European peoples do. And so there's come this, but finally these strategies of social advocacy have intersected with kosher interests, such that they are marketing an idea which encourages European identity as right-wing or far-right. And against a characterology of the left, that is to say, these social organizing concepts. Now, the antithesis, of course, one of the things is that we are there. The casting, therefore, is Europeans are or the left, so to speak, is against nature. It's that it's unnatural. It doesn't deal with nature. It doesn't deal with facts. It doesn't deal with truth. It doesn't deal with coherent principles. And so they get whites to identify as such, to overcompensate, and to react as such, to where we identify with. We go beyond trying to harmonize our interests with nature, which is what really we should be doing, and identify instead with natural fallacy, using nature as the guide, the sheer guide, as opposed to the relative interests of our people, being the calibration against which facts, truth, feedback of objective facts of nature and truth are to be gauged against.
Is a sort of a narrative versus just bald facts, sort of what's a dichotomy, I guess?
Well, the thing is that, quite simply, with this characterology of the left as the enemy that came about was delivered circa 2008, paleoconservatism 2.0, which was the alternative right and now the dissident right. They are trying to say that this is what the left is. And they get a lot of the prominent dissident right figures like Rams Paul, for example, like Academic Agent, like Millennial Woes, many others, talking about this characterology of the left as this creature that doesn't deal with reality, that doesn't deal with nature, that doesn't deal with facts, that doesn't deal with just the injustice of it all, that doesn't deal with truth, and that the right, which of course whites would identify with, is about these things, when in fact the proper governance, if we were to be advocating our people systemically in our interests, it would be social advocacy, that is to say, the relative interests of our people,
Right.
would be unionized, would form the calibration, and truth inquiries would be feedback, whether it's natural facts gauged against it. We wouldn't just say, "Oh, this is what nature dictates. Nature dictates might makes right. That's what we're going to do." These things would be tempered and corrected by the reality of our group interests. Am I making sense to you?
No, yeah. So especially on that last point where makes right, I'm not sure what portion of the quote unquote dissident right or whatever it is really believes in that, but I've seen it trotted out in a number of places. A lot of people that do talk about might makes right, that they also sort of, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I've listened to people talk about that and use those terms, and you know what? It's the problem is it's actually true in quotation marks, because
I know you're right. But let me interject here.
Yeah.
Coming back to Plato,
Yeah.
He says, Plato answers this. How does one deal with the tyrant who takes the position that might makes right?
Right.
Well, you organize the mass of people, because as a group they can become the mightier than the tyrant. So
Right.
this is what our enemies don't want us to do. They don't want us to unionize, particularly circa 2008 with their greater hegemony than ever. They didn't want European peoples coming into this notion of left ethno-nationalism,
Right.
because that would be the means to hold elitists to account, and our rank and file to account as well. That would structure accountability and correctivity, and therefore homeostasis, autonomy and sovereignty. They instead, being on top as they are, want to encourage, as ever, right-wing identity, which corresponds with objectivism and a narrowing of warrant, as opposed to a warrant in the union of the group. The warrant comes to facts, truth, principle, the king, the god, an ever narrowing of warrant, and therefore a destabilizing, and something that's they can work with a Richard Spencer or a corporate leader who's not really working, someone who's really not particularly concerned with being with accountability to their group, their people from whom they emerge. So they're trying to align with that, with those right wingers, and liberals and neoliberals, to stave off and to disrupt our unionization and coalition building. Now, it's like much of it. It's not just a marketing campaign of a characterology of the left. It's also been a gross misrepresentation of what postmodernity was supposed to be.
Right.
Starting with Giambattista Vico and his criticism of Descartes, he was trying to take us back into Aristotle's notion of praxis. That is to say, our people being at the center of our worldview. Aristotle says we're social animals, and we are philosophically political philosophers first and foremost, because if the politics are out of whack, nothing else matters.
Right.
And these are forerunners to social constructionist ideas. Again, ideas that were deliberately vilified for our people because they're exactly what we need to sensitize ourselves to our agency and our indebtedness and our accountability to our social groups.
In a way, though, that I mean, so I'm not happy about the whole idea of might makes right, and I think it's very cynical. But what you're describing essentially is that, and this is the horrible reality, is that might does make right, because they can describe what we have to be and how we have to be seen and how we have to go forward and how we have to, react and how we have to organize.
Well, you put it in quotes, and that was correct. Yes, it kind of makes right, but
it doesn't. It's not morally right. It's not good. It's not like, there's a lot of the quotes encompass, and then of course sort of scalpel off a lot of things. It's, I mean, for instance, somebody gets their way in history, right? They get their way in history, and it, maybe eventually down the road, someone's going to figure out that whatever narrative that they pushed wasn't exactly right. But that is kind of part of what we're really struggling against, is that
there's a brute reality that we're thrown into. Then we're moving to Heidegger, right? That from in this postmodern turn, also called the hermeneutic turn, right? There's a thrownness, that we're put into a radical ambiguity of our circumstance, where on an animal level, might makes right. And then there's a liberation, also what Heidegger talks about,
right?
A liberation from mere facticity, where we become more authentic in our humanness, because we are coherent and therefore accountable, and therefore agentive in our capacity, for example, to organize and transcend the animal throes and become more distinctly human and and just in our way of managing our peoples, so it is possible, and it is laid out by set forth by our philosophers, but the problem is that it's been these concepts have been misrepresented. They've been red caped, as I said, because they don't want our people to understand this. They want people to think, when they hear postmodernity, they want it to think Dada hyper relativism nonsense, right? When in fact, what postmodernity was meant to do, Heidegger was doing, what for example, is to retrieve our people from the Cartesian estrangement of modernity, and take us back into a re-centralization of a worldview through our people,
Right. Of course.
and unionized as such. Accountability is structured, which will provides a big difference from the universality. Universality, for example, of the Abrahamic gods. That's and kind of the Enlightenment sort of purity spiral, to objectively escape the guilt trip of the Abrahamic gods. The taking us back, taking the postmodern turn from that back into a re-centralization of praxis of our people group, of our relative interests there, and an accountability there. What it does is that it allows us to structure these and maintain these differences, say of our differences from Africans or Asians. We have different rates of maturity, different levels of sublimation, which are important to protect and can be run roughshod over,
right,
with the universalization of modernity, and particularly modernity as weaponized.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
And then it's really modernity as weaponized was particularly pointed through John Locke, as instituted in the American Constitution, the idea of civil individual rights. Locke was he was disgruntled by the idea of the English aristocracy having educational opportunities, for example, that the middle class didn't have. That disgruntledness dovetailed with his empiricist philosophy, empiricism being the other side of the empirical side of Descartes' dichotomy between beyond nature or within nature. So he's on the within nature side of the Enlightenment's Cartesian dichotomy. Anyway, so that dovetailed with his idea that, with his empirical philosophy, that to say that, classifications were a fiction of the mind. They don't exist in empirical reality. We all have the same perceptions, therefore we should all be granted the same individual rights. Okay, so that's what I thought. And it sounds good at first blush, and it was kind of a cool thing when America was still 90% European. It wasn't too bad. It was seemed like a great thing to give the ordinary guy a chance at the big time. And the thing is that, well, it probably would have been a bit destructive just left of its own accord in its Enlightenment Cartesian naivety, but it provided a blind spot, a vulnerability which was weaponized by the YKW in the form of civil rights, which were, a prohibition of freedom from association for European peoples, essentially. And, of course, anti-racism, which really is what that is, a prohibition of classification and discrimination thereupon, no matter how necessary and benign that classification and discrimination might be. So, because the kosher folks, they know this stuff, and they know how to organize, and they know how to disrupt organization, and so
they know it so well that we all read from their manual on it, and we treat it as a word. Yeah,
we do, and that's where they were working with modernity, but then where they were weaponizing modernity against us, but then also they turned to postmodernity, and they took concepts that we need, which are really ours to begin with, hermeneutics. Everybody thinks, oh, narrative, and just like it's anti-science. No, it's not. It's meant to be a concept that works with Heidegger was a hermeneuticist, and it works with the idea of the liberation from mere facticity and the taking us into the process of inquiry, as opposed to Cartesian estrangement of modernity. Bring this back into praxis, into a realm where we might be accountable to our people and find our agency as such. Social constructionism, another idea, red-caped. Diversity, more minor quibble perhaps, diversity. Well, of course diversity is a good thing, but they've red-caped it so that what they mean by it is integration. Multiculturalism, that's a good thing. Of course, we want multiculturalism, but they've got everybody associating that with monoculturalism, which was that's the ultimate disaster. A monocultural view was the primitives' worldview before tradition, before ethnocentrism, before modernity. This was there's only one worldview, and if the primitive thinks you are a racist, then you are not even human. They're going to throw you in the communal stew pot because you don't fit in monoculture, which doesn't allow for people with differences, i.e., racists. So, in many ways, they are misrepresenting modernity to our detriment, because what postmodernity to our detriment, because what postmodernity is supposed to do is allow us to maintain our inherited forms, our inherited kinds, take the best from tradition, leave what tradition is backwards behind, and take the best of modernity and put aside the destructive aspects of modernity, because not all modernity is good, and to manage that in a coherent way. That's what it's supposed to do. That's not what people think of when they think of postmodernity. Just like when they think of the left, they think of liberalism, when in fact the left and liberal are complete opposites. Left is a unionization. You're either in or you're out. It's the opposite of liberalism. Now I'm taking some license in identifying unionization as the depth grammar of the left, not not equality, inequality. But which I think is a red cape, which has our people arguing against equality, which makes you a jackass by definition. Or you're against equality, are you? Good. Take that out there to the people and see how far you get. They're going to look upon you as an asshole, and well, you would be. It's a trick.
Yeah.
It's not about the left. Is not about. It's not about inequality, equality, and equality. It's about unionization and coalition building, social organization and social advocacy. And this is the first. This is not shallow philosophy, as one of my critics tried to make it sound. This is the first and foremost deepest philosophy. This is where Aristotle was coming from.
I'm not sure if you've heard of this creator, but he's called I'm going to screw up his name, the Distributist. He's one of the neo-reactionaries, and I generally don't hold much to neo-reactionary thinkers or bloggers or whatever. But he has one video called, I'm going to mess up the video, but it was about Caesar's, after Caesar was killed. It was about the trial, I think, that was defended between Brutus and Mark Antony. It was called Narrative and Fact, or it was kind of like balancing the two, narrative versus fact. And as we all know, narratives are wishy-washy, but facts change. At least that's how I put it. Like I suppose that there's like an ultimate truth about something that exists out there, but in any age, how we look at that truth is going to change. So we're going to see in the 1800s, we're going to look at this revolution from this way, and 200 years later, we're going to look at it from a different perspective. And there's going to be a textbook version, there's going to be the handed down version, etc. And because of all of that, in the end, we do just have to, in some way, let our hearts guide us. I suppose is kind of what I'm not going to say I'm glomming onto this thing, but at some point there has exactly, it's a social
there is emergence to be held on to. That's part of the postmodern thing. It's not just social constructionism. It is emergence as well. That's also anti-modern and anti-Cartesian, and that's what you're talking about there, and that's correct. But there, social constructionism proper doesn't deny facts. What it's doing is it's always allowing for at least a modicum of agency and a recognition of the reality of our social relation, of our interaction, of our social construction, as to, at very least, how facts come to count. It doesn't say that Mount Everest isn't, it doesn't try to, it will call someone who says that Mount Everest is not the tallest mountain crazy.
But what if in 100 years,
at least it allows, okay,
it isn't the tallest mountain? Like that's also possible.
It always allows for at least some agency in the determination of how facts come to count. It doesn't say that there's no brute facts. There are brute facts.
No, of course.
But social constructionism, properly understood, acknowledges that as well.
Right.
It's not like Jared Taylor says. It's just kind of like, where race is this optical illusion. It doesn't say that, because that would be solipsistic. If someone were to say that, it'd be rather solipsistic. They would not be dealing with social. They would not be social. They would not be able to be dealing with reality. They would still be, in a word, Cartesian. If they tried to say that race has no bearing in factual reality, in biological reality.
Right.
But you're not hearing that. And that's my point. You're not hearing that in these dissident writers, because our enemies don't want that understood. They don't want them understanding what was supposed to be done with the concept of postmodernity. This was meant to protect our peoples against the ravages of modernity, against backwards traditions and ethnocentrisms, which are needlessly antagonistic, let alone primitive cultures.
Right. But by the way, I have a couple of questions from. I know you're probably watching the chat. I need to get out of here in about 5 minutes. But categorical imperative. You answered this question to me backstage, I believe. But he asked, or she asked, what does red-caped mean?
Okay, I could probably answer that best by going to my post, because this is not my good time of day, and I'm sorry for monopolizing the conversation. Next time I talk with you, I hope to just let you talk more, because you're such a brilliant guy. It's a shame, but I do this when kind of like nervous or something.
Yeah, for sure. I understand that.
Let me answer what this is. An original concept of mine, and it's working well in explaining what they're doing. They've red-caped all of postmodern conceptualization, for example. I'm bringing up the post. The first paragraph sums it up pretty well.
Was this a blog post or something like that?
Yeah, at DNA Nations.
Okay.
I don't know why it's taking so long to load.
Well, while it's loading, Daniel sent me. Okay, bring it up. Well, actually, you know what? Before you bring it, he sent me a nice email, and it was very detailed. Unfortunately, my computer is a tiny thing, and I had to bump up the what is it called? The view. What is it? Font. I had to make the font much larger and read it twice. There's a lot of detail in there, and because I'm new to some of these, exactly like categorical
is it asking? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know what red. I can't remember if he said red-caped in
red caping. Well, it's my coinage, so there's
okay.
Not many people are going to be familiar.
There were 4 or 5 terms in that one email that I didn't know what was going on, and so after it really helped sort of asking behind the stage what you meant by these things, and certainly it made sense of the live stream that I listened to and your email as well. Anyway, let's see what red cape means.
It's not coming up.
It's not coming up.
I mean, the screen,
When I first heard red caped, I was thinking it was like a Superman thing. So it was like this guy puts on the
think more of the matador.
The matador. Okay,
holding up his red cape before a bull and having the bull chase it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, wouldn't that be something almost like a red herring in a way, getting people to kind of like fly off after something or chase off after another idea?
They're taking the best ideas of social organization and advocacy,
right,
and distorting them, misrepresenting them, and weaponizing them against us.
Right.
So that it repulses our people to the very underlying ideas that we need. And so we're chasing after and chasing away and attacking that which we need most. For example, well, I hope this doesn't offend you, but for example, they've red-caped our moral order with Christianity. And so what happens is that people decide that morals are a bunch of bullocks, and they do the Nietzsche, like we're beyond morals, because morals are all nonsense. Because
right.
Look, this is our moral order, Christianity, and it's all this tangled morass. So they're chasing away the underlying concept, which is that we need a moral order which actually looks after our a moral interest and is accountable to our biological systems, not to some Abrahamic God, some kosher God in the sky.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I mean, and again, just so I'm new to your channel, obviously, it's my first time on here, and I'm not sure how many people have ever heard of my channel on Odyssey, right? Which is, what's a term? It's not mainstream or whatever. So I can't imagine a lot of people know who I am, but I do talk about my complicated relationship with Christianity, and so I consider myself a Christian. But like, what? I'll just explain it. Why am I a Christian? Well, I have only to be honest with myself, and that is, I was brought up a Christian. Everyone I know in my family essentially is Christian. There's some people who are considered backslidden. There's some people who are atheists, but they're not atheists to the Hindu gods, they're not atheists to the Chinese gods. They're atheists to the Christian God. And they might be, more amenable to sort of Judaic understandings of the world. I've got no idea. But because of that, and the milieu I come from is Christianity. And even if I wanted to break apart from it, where would I go? Certainly from a European context. Well, you could go to the Hindu route because there's a Hindu route, right? Or you could go to this route, or you could go to atheism. And I feel at the moment, and this does in a way sound really cynical. It's like, well, Nathan, or Snork, why are you interested in sticking with Christianity? Only because it's what you know? Well, yeah. I mean, that is actually a huge thing about it. Everyone that I can trace back in my family are all basically Christians, except for the people in modernity, or not modernity, whatever this age is, that have rejected it. And because of that, I can't. What am I going to do? Slap in the face my father and my mother? But at the same time,
I understand exactly what you're saying. This was my position exactly. That I could not go past. Christianity without personally attempting to practice it and experience fellowship through it. There's an analogy. First of all, there's an analogy there, though, with what I'm talking about with postmodernity, modernity, traditional ethnocentrism, and monoculturalism. Because those things are misrepresented. People, like you're saying, they don't know where they just fall to one of those things because they don't know what else to do. They don't understand, in the case of postmodernity, how postmodernity is supposed to work. Now, in the case of Christianity, this is what we're all up against, and what I'm up against, and what Claire Call tries to weaponize against me. Oh, you think you're going to start up a new religion? Well, as I see it, there's not a choice. There seems to be a problem at the moment with my website. I don't know what's going on. I have to look into that after the show. But
I'll see that after. Yeah.
What I did was I put up an article that I'm pretty happy with. When I was wrestling with issues of a moral order and struggling with Christianity, I was first put onto the idea that there were alternative moral orders, which made me, clarified for me the fact that Christianity wasn't necessarily the moral order. And then I read Kant's Prolegomenon to the Metaphysics of Morals, and that helped as a step towards considering maybe a different way, because with Kant, there's things in Kant that really aren't. He was a Christian, but there's things in Kant that really aren't going to be found in the Christian text. But since then, I've come to the conviction that we do, in fact, need a new moral order which serves our biology and is intent on doing that. And Christianity is not going to do it. If it not directly. You might have heard Adam Green talking about Christianity being false opposition. Well, I've been talking about it in those terms since 2013, well before Adam Green. And again, it's not. I don't. It's a lot to take on, but it's not. With the if we can get to the concept of unionization, then which is very practical, then the means for establishing moral rules can be established, because, well, there's no transcending. There's always going to be some things that you can do, some things that are obligatory, some things that are prohibited, and some things that are legitimate. There's no getting beyond morals at some level, and
right.
They renegotiating them is something that our people are going to have to do. Most of our people are not Christians at this point, and in the meantime, I understand Christians, that they can't just walk past thousands of years of our of what has been our moral order, and I'm not. They're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to bring into bearing a common moral order.
But it's not only that. I mean, by the way, I do really have to get going in I said 5 minutes, like 8 minutes ago. 4 minutes. I gotta stick with it. So, but it's not just that. I would just say this. So, the non-Christians among our brethren, they are not coming from they're not atheists from a Hindu perspective. They're not atheists from a Shinto perspective. They are atheists from a Christian perspective. And I consider this just a schism within Christianity. Essentially, the things that they reject in Christianity come from a Christian perspective, and therefore they're trying to work out a secular salvation, but against Christian, maybe not norms, but sort of a Christian understanding of the world. And because of that, and again, this is kind of just describing myself. If I were to say, like, okay, Nathan, because you do agree, for instance, that there's a problem with Christianity, and it's not stemming from a religion or a group of people that are our people. Therefore, a new system needs to be made. And from that, you need to derive, maybe a religion, you need to derive a new philosophy, etc. But if I'm to say that, I also have to agree that this thing has to be created from a new cloth. And because of that, I mean, this is the biggest hang up for me. If you abandon Christianity in the West right now, and of course, Christianity in its nature, just, bulldozed, or, I'll be fair here, or converted nicely the people that came before it. But we don't have a connection. So if you want to be a pagan, what are you going to do? You're going to have to go through Christian texts. You're going to have to somehow glom onto something that's been gone for 1,000 years. But Christianity, just a moment, Christianity, right or wrong, it has a moral order, it has a philosophy, it has a whole bunch of stuff behind it and below it. And as you know, you can't just jettison all that. And you can't just create something new out of nothing. And so we all have to dig back into something. And unfortunately, and I think this is unfortunate, to find something either new or better, we do have to dig through Christianity, because that really is, if you want to consider it a blockage point, that's fine. Consider a blockage point to other truth that's either older or just better or more transcendent. Or if Christianity,
can you hang on for just a minute more? I don't really agree that Christianity provides the rule structure which will allow us to hold up well.
Well, I don't either, actually.
And when we go back, any religion is originally developed through in negotiation with people, and I do believe that we can identify episodes which deserve the status of sacred. That is, and they reconstruct something which is absolutely necessary to our survival, which is profound, which is connected to our forebears, which is necessary for our children. We can't let what's happening happen to our children. We can't let them come into this world like this. And so, marriage, of course, and monogamy would be one thing that would be very important, as at least an important option in this respect. For example, and the boundaries to our people should have a certain sacredness, and our human and pervasive ecology. But there are things that we can identify which are transcendent in that hermeneutic realm of the large percentage of our people who are not good, and the rest of us who are deeply flawed, who have bad imperfections, which require, so that we not become cynics and jaded, that connection, that religious connection to a realm that connects to this pattern of our people and its relation to the world and others, which is worthy of reverence. So I do think it's possible to cultivate a new religiosity, and in my opinion, we have to. I do think that Christianity was originally devised by Jewry as a means largely to overthrow Rome, who they saw as the next Babylon, for example, and it's a universal religion. So, and though brilliant people can use it, people like Avril, and they can, construe it in ways that kind of serve our interests. Sooner or later, you're going to come back to the text, and it's saying this. It's saying that Jesus is more important than your family, and and so on. So yeah.
We're on the same page on that. I guess maybe I'm not describing myself very well. It could be because it's almost 11 at night. Could be because I've had not enough hot chocolate. I don't know, but at the point, it's true. I mean, the longer I think about it, the more I think about it, I do believe that there is something pretty deep and dark about the creation of Christianity, or the aiming of it toward the European man. At the same time, I don't think that we're going to ever find some sort of, and I'm not evangelizing, by the like, just please, no one who's listening to this, please think that I'm evangelizing. But what I'm trying to say is that through some sort of dark narrative or subversive narrative, you're still going to find people that will point to the truth. And I think that we have to be able to dig those pieces out. We also have to be able to respect the fact that our ancestors were not just retards. Now, obviously, people go along with the flow, right? If everyone around you is a Christian, what are you going to be? You're going to be something else? And even in the middle of that, even if there's a lot of subversive elements that may or may not have come to the fore, like maybe that subversive element is hanging on for like 1800 or 1900 or something like that, for certain things to come along. Even if that's the case, there's going to be I describe this kind of ineloquently, I suppose, as beauty, and that's just sort of the beauty of the human spirit or the European spirit, I should say.
But that beauty of the spirit is comes from us.
Right, exactly.
It's not dependent on Christianity.
No, I agree wholly. But what I'm trying to say is that wrong or right, Christianity, again, wrong or right, channeled the European creativity and beauty and the eye and the soul and everything into what can connect to, I believe, a higher understanding of the world. That said,
it did some things good at times, but that's because our people were doing good things almost despite it. I mean, we have an amazing people who are gonna do something, even with that Baroque apparatus.
No, and by the way, I hear my daughter heading to bed right now. So
okay.
I want to say just this. I agree absolutely on that point, and I believe just maybe I've not made myself clear, just for anyone watching as well as for yourself. When I'm not stumping for Christianity. I'm the type of person that has a hard time. I suppose I'm the type of person that I'll go to the grocery store one way and I'll come back the same way because I like the habit of it and I appreciate sort of knowing what's going on. And
that's absolutely essential. Traditions and postmodernity is meant to engage in traditions which are helpful and to not be misdirected by the idea that if something is not new, it's not good, and to not feel that you have not be subject to the modernist paradox, be different so that you can fit in, or to feel like the pangs of self-loathing for the appearance of conformity, for participating in traditional practices. Moral order is absolutely essential. I don't get off. I regret my disagreements with Christianity, and I understand the Christians as people who are trying to do the right thing and largely will do the right thing, but not it won't be strictly in accordance with the texts.
No, I mean, this is obvious. I mean, I think that just so I can steer this back toward where I need to be in the next 5 minutes, I would, if you would like to go to that point, if you'll have me on again, I'd love to chat on that point, for an hour or 2 hours.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm gone for the next week and a half, and obviously you're a busy man. But this is kind of what I'm thinking about. I'm not going to say it's my wheelhouse. I'm not like a great philosopher. I don't have I do have a website.
You're a very intelligent guy. I've enjoyed any stream of yours that I've listened to.
Well, I mean,
and I've gotten a lot out of it.
well,
really,
thank you very much.
Don't undersell yourself either.
Well, I'm not trying to undersell myself. Like my website, by the way, I do have a website. It's called om-image.net. It's a photography website, and I talk about geek gear, but I haven't updated it in over a year, I think, because I just don't care about that. Only things that have been really bothering me, the stuff that I've been talking on my Odyssey channel. And what I'm saying is I really am coming from a complete normie perspective. And then in the last 5 years, well, I'm sorry, I should say from 2012 until now, I've gone on a slow journey from basically absolute normie to, well, whatever you want to categorize me as now. And because of that, they have controlled so heavily what is normie. Yep. I mean, even our moral order. So that's why you've gone from normie to radical. It's perfectly understandable. Yeah.
And I look forward to talking to you again. I'm sorry
Yeah.
for monopolizing the conversation so much.
Oh,
I
no,
got to see what the hell happened to my website. Something's on the fritz, and this
Well,
happened
next time,
all of a sudden.
let's take a look at your website. I'll be happy to see it as well. And
And,
by the way, thank you very much for having.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you again, and I want to get you talking with the other guys because they're really smart too.
Well, I would appreciate it. By the way, just on before I go,
I'm sorry for not answering Thor's
right.
the question about red capes more thoroughly, but I just became frantic about my website in the moment. But next time. Sorry. Now, what were you saying?
I was just going to say, I don't know if he's up for it. Tor Mitunes has been on my channel. Good guy. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's up to chat at the moment, but he does an audiobook channel. Basically, that's not all he does, but he reads probably more than most people that consider themselves scholars, probably on a monthly basis.
Well, then more than me for sure.
And he loads of great audiobooks that connect basically nodal views of the world from all over.
Excellent.
The sort of the educational to the philosophic to the religious. We've got, I don't know if he has time for now. If not, sometime. He's a great guy to chat with, by the way. I'm just kind of stumping for him. As
We'll have him on next time. No problem.
Okay. Daniel, thank you very much for having me on. I'm sorry to leave like this, but
no,
it's a pleasure.
Well, on the stream there, thanks everybody who's been in the chat, and until next time, I'll be here probably next weekend, and then sometime in maybe around 2 weeks we'll be back with Snorkel Blog. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you very much.
And bye for now.
Goodbye.